Welcome to tonight's Wednesday edition of the Klown Hour podcast, the early winter edition of the Klown Hour, if you will. Well, I guess midwinter now. But anyway, I'm Scott Burks, my co-host Wayne Nash. Check him out at the yard /HBCU Sports Rest about all things HBCU Sports. You see the address on the backdrop right there, the yard hbcu.com. You can also check him out on SLZE Radio, aka SLZE Radio, every Tuesday night on Facebook Live with him, the coach, and Sweet Blue. And last but not least, I tried that for the first time. Last but not least, you can check out his great work on herosports.com, where he raps on all things FCS athletics as they pertain to HBCU sports. You see the website here? This is my sports blog, The Klown Times. So you can find me at web at www.theklowntimes.net. You can check me out on Facebook as well, where you're on your smartphone, laptop, desktop, wherever it may be. You type The Klown Times in the search window. You'll find me there as well. I posted a couple of sophomore things on there, so check them out, please. Pretty please. Also, like, subscribe, comment, and share. We're picking up some. We're almost at 300 subscribers still, so that's cool stuff. And speaking of which, get the merch.
Get that merch.
CafePress.com, search for the Klown Time Sports. I have the address to that link, as well as the links to Dwayne's work on herosports.com and the HBCU.com, I should say, and the description when I upload this to YouTube tomorrow. So you'll find that there as well. So we're gonna get a quick, this should be a quick show tonight. There's not a lot going on outside college football play. So we're going to recap the final college football playoff rankings. I'm going to talk about Brittle Bob, as you call it, AKA Robert Griffin III's new book, Surviving Washington. Well, the fuck that is. And we'll also get into HBCU Sports. We're going to preview the Celebration Bowl, and hopefully we'll infotain you with that. And so we'll get it started. So I mentioned earlier, college football playoff. They didn't have the chaos that I wanted. But we wanted. We really wanted some chaos. I was hoping for some chaos. I was wanting to see the college football playoff committee sweat, but alas, things were almost chalk. I said almost chalk because Alabama, what was considered an upset, I kind of figured that they'll at least compete against Georgia. They beat Georgia. They spanked Georgia, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Michigan just beat the hell out of like the dog piss out of Iowa. Yeah. And UC did their thing against Houston. And speaking of UC, Baylor did UC a solid by beating Oklahoma State, especially holding them on at that late fourth goal line stand. That was something, man. People was just now like, so in college football world, like, so I say that because you keep in mind that Oklahoma State was fifth going to that game, and the coach was playing behind you versus Cincinnati. So the prevailing thought was, if Oklahoma State were to take care of business against Baylor, they would have given them 3 wins over the top 20 college football playoff ranked teams. UC only has 1 top 20, but 2 top 25, but 1 top 20 in Notre Dame. So that was the thought, but thankfully for UC fans everywhere and fans of people want to stick up for the little guy, if you will. Baylor did not choke the lead away, but they almost did. And UC, which led UC to just win. Win a year in, and they won. And I recorded on my phone, I got a link on YouTube, the scene from Cincinnati's sports. They had a sports banquet in the year sports banquet for the seniors. Okay. And I think the other players too. But the point is, they had the athletic staff there, the athletic department there, I should say, and their families, the coach, head coach, and the whole lot. And I think the campus president was there. Okay. And they showed their reaction when they announced who's number 4, in the college football playoff rankings, and came up on the screen. Well, we could have kind of knew when they put Notre Dame at 5th. Right.
Yeah. Who number 4 was
Baylor up,
and
I think moved Baylor up to 6th. And so
Baylor was moved to 7th. I
Oh,
think.
7. I'm sorry. I forgot who was 6 then. But anyway, that doesn't matter.
Ohio State was 6.
That's right. Yes. Why the hell did I? But anyway, Ohio State was ranked 6. And so they showed that further. Oh, they're higher than we all thought. And they said Notre Dame at 5th. I was like, well, it's a wrap. And they made it official. They showed the reaction on campus, and yeah, people were partying like it was on sale for $19.99. So now we have the first time a group of 5 school has crashed the college football playoff party. I'm sure the people at the Powers That Be did not want to see this. I'm sure that the committee definitely didn't want to see this because remember where they started, 6th. We're going to rank 2nd in the poll. So anyway, man. So I know people are saying that this now UC has earned the right to get shellacked by Alabama. But I mean, hell, Ohio State got shellacked last year by Alabama. Washington got shellacked. Michigan State got shellacked. Notre Dame got shellacked by them twice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's almost as if it's like a clown show. No, I mean they're Alabama. They're good. I mean, they're just outstanding. They proved that against Georgia. They curb stomped Georgia. I mean, come on, you're gonna clown Georgia now? So anyway, I just like to just give a quick shout out to Cincinnati for being the first group of 5. I think they're going to compete. I'm not saying they'll win. I'm saying that they'll compete. They're built like a Big Ten squad in terms of depth, and they built in the trenches first and they're built inside out. And they're better. They have so many seniors on that team, which may have fit the future next season, depending on how they recruit. But anyway, so give me your thoughts on the weekend and how awesome and weird at the same time that the college football playoff committee did not resort to a beauty contest and actually pick the top 4 teams who deserve to be there.
I'll say this, right? So across the board in terms of college football, it seemed as though all of the championship games were relatively lopsided with the exception of Baylor and Oklahoma State. Yes. And that also includes the SWAC championship title game, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
They had that game on there too as well. So that was pretty cool at the sports.
Yeah, it was, oh my God, it was 3 games on at the same time at 4 p.m. I had my head on the swivel trying to catch as much action as I possibly could at the same time. But they all happened to be interesting games up until a point, right? Now, I actually released my top 10, my final top 10 that Saturday night so that I wouldn't have any necessarily layover. I wanted to go ahead and have my rankings as fresh as possible immediately after I watched all of those games happen live. And my top 4 was slightly different than the committee's top 4 with Georgia and Cincinnati switching spots in my ranking, having Cincinnati at 4.
I was hoping they would do the same thing.
And Georgia at 5. Yeah. Now I understand why they didn't want to do that because, of course, we just saw Alabama and Georgia, and the committee probably thought that America didn't want to see that this soon, this early.
Sure.
So why not go ahead and I guess set up Cincinnati because, of course, based upon what Michigan did, you know, there was no way in the world that you can keep them anything lower than 2.
Right.
Even though there are a lot of people in America who thought that they should have been moved up to number 1 because of the fact that they were 2 and the fact that they won, they should have rightfully moved up. But my thought process on that is if you're number 3 Alabama or number 4 Alabama and you defeat you're number 3 Alabama, you defeat the number 1 team in the nation.
Yeah.
You know what? You're deserving of number 1.
Exactly. I had no problems with Alabama being number 1. I kind of figured it was going to happen and no problem with it whatsoever.
Neither do I, right? My thing was just making sure that the matchups were going to be matchups that, you know, I wouldn't have had an issue with. As much as my eye test said Georgia, Alabama, I'm not opposed necessarily to Alabama and Cincinnati, or maybe even I would have loved to have seen, but that still would have been Alabama, Georgia. I would have loved to have seen Michigan, Cincinnati, you know, in that first round. But
that would have been a cool matchup. Yes.
It would have, right? But my thing is, I don't want to necessarily sell Cincinnati too short just yet. because I'm still going off the body of work that Alabama gave us throughout the entire season, not based upon what they did to Georgia in that SEC championship game.
Right.
I was thinking the entire season that Georgia would Georgia. And for those who aren't familiar with me in that saying, that basically means that Georgia was going to do something similar to what they did this past Saturday, which was collapse.
Yeah.
Because they've done that time and again over the past 15 years. I don't care where Georgia will come into the season ranked, but if it's somewhere in the top 5 at some point in the season, they're going to collapse. And I think this is the latest in the season. No, I take that back because they did make it to the college playoffs a year or two ago, right? Where they ended up getting curb stomped. But that's just them in that progression where they're progressively getting better. And unfortunately, Kirby just can't seem to get over that hump that is called Nick Saban and Alabama. And unfortunately, it happens again. And there are a lot of people, not a lot, there's some people that I've seen on social media that have been calling for Coach Kirby's head and saying that maybe they should go a different direction.
Why?
Because they feel as though that they can't get over that.
I mean,
Alabama
see, that's what
hump.
the problem I have with Georgia fans, man. And if you talk to anybody who's from the state of Georgia or who's familiar around that area, they talk about Georgia fans the same way they talk about Cowboys fans in Texas.
Yeah.
They're so entitled.
Yeah.
So self-entitled, I should say. And they just come up short. Now, I would say at least Georgia used to be mediocre. At least they're no longer mediocre. They're winning division titles. I understand that you want to have high aspirations, but damn it, if you have a behemoth in the other division that not only beats you down, but beats everybody else down, except for maybe Auburn. They have trouble with Auburn because it's a rivalry game. But nevertheless, I don't know what the problem would be. I mean, who the hell is they going to get?
Great question, right?
Are they really going to let Kirby Smart, his recruiting prowess, and Coach Ackerman go? Are they really going to do that? Do they really
I doubt
want
that
that
very seriously. I doubt it, right? But it's funny because you compared the University of Georgia with the Dallas Cowboys, both as teams and fan bases, and everything that you just described with the University of Georgia. It's the same thing that's happened with the Cowboys. But I digress because it's going to look like Cowboy hate to the Cowboy lovers out there, especially during Dallas week here in DC. And that's the last thing. Well, I don't either, right? But that's the last thing that I want to do during this week is give them an excuse for them to have another reason to hate me this week. But I just find it weird that whenever, but God, this has been a prolonged situation with Georgia and with Kirby Smart. The fact that they just can't seem to at least even snip. Well, I shouldn't even say snip. They can't even get into the national championship game, so they can at least say that they've done that. But it just happens to be they just constantly, time and again, run into Georgia, and if not Georgia but Alabama. But if it just happens to be a season where they can luck up and that not be the case, things may go into their favor. But this is that year because now they got Michigan to face, and Michigan is another one of those programs that I like to say that love to slip up in key situations. Right. So it's going to be an intriguing game for me based upon watching two teams that just have that ability to flub in pressure situations, even though both teams have somehow gotten over a hump this season.
Well, Michigan especially Michigan. With authority 2 weeks ago over Ohio State, but
with authority over Ohio State, and then double stamping it with their win over Iowa.
Iowa could stand a chance. They didn't stand a chance.
Not at all, right? And I feel bad for my man Big E over there at the WWE, the Universal Champion, if memory serves me correctly.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just interesting, like I said before, to see exactly who's going to come out the victor in that situation. And then, like I said before, or what I was alluding to earlier, University of Cincinnati, I'm not necessarily knocking them completely out based upon what Alabama has done and the way that they've looked for the majority of the season, having all these close games, especially finishing the season with a string of close games, only to go ahead and thump on Georgia like they normally do.
Yeah. And I think that, to your point, Alabama admitted Nick Saban admitted that they came up with chip on their shoulder because they were if I'm not mistaken, they were the underdog.
They was most definitely the underdogs, yeah.
And they were like everyone wanted to crown Georgia, and for good reason at the time, because Alabama again they were 2 overtimes away. Well, actually just a choke job from Auburn. I'm gonna call it like it is. They choke job from Auburn from being a 2-loss team. Now, but interesting, if they finish a 2-loss SEC champion, beating them Georgia down the way they did, that would be an interesting decision for the committee. Do you take them over Baylor? Do you take them over whatever, right? Or Notre Dame? What do you do at that point? Then they would have broken more ground in terms of impressiveness to have a 2-loss team in the college football playoff. That's never happened.
Yeah, right.
That's going to happen soon, but not yet.
Sooner or later, yeah, right. And it's going to be a situation where you end up having a bunch of 2-loss teams that make that happen.
Right.
Or there's going to be a 2-loss team that's going to be that impressive. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now, right? The way that happens is a team loses 2 tough ones early in the season. They go on a string. They probably win 10 straight, make their way to the championship game, and end up beating a top-seeded team in their conference title game to move them into that either that 3rd or 4th spot to make them the first 2-loss team to make it into. That's the formula to make that happen.
And you know what else, bro? I'm gonna mention this too. I didn't touch on them earlier, but the ACC. Now remember when our guy Andre was on here, was saying that the fixes would be in not the top 6 or 7, but 15 through 25, because they are building the case for these teams to move up if they beat some of those teams, right? So I'm looking at what if the likes of Pitt and Wake Forest didn't have those inexplicable losses, what if Pitt didn't lose to Western Michigan inexplicably at home? That would have been just a 1-loss squad because it would have lost to Miami with the other loss. Yeah. But they would have been a 1-loss squad that would have been a top 10 team. What if Wake Forest didn't choke away that big lead against Carolina? I know they got curb stomped by Clemson. Clemson was coming on late in the year, but that's Clemson. So, but point is, they would have been, as well as Pitt, in the top 10, because I'm looking at the top 10 right now. You got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2-loss teams in the top 10. Start with Oklahoma. So starting with Ohio State, Baylor, Ole Miss, Oklahoma State, and Michigan State. And Pitt is now ranked 12th as a result of that big win in the ACC championship game. So you mean to tell me that if you take that 1 loss away from early in the season to Western Michigan, you don't think they'd be at least 5th or 6th?
They most definitely would have been 5th or 6th. And
threatening to make a tough decision for the committee because you would have had a 1-loss Power 5. I know that Pitt didn't play the greatest schedule in the world, but they're a Power 5 school. So, and they would have beaten curb stomp a Wake Forest team that was ranked in the top 20, and beaten Clemson early in the year. That's in the top 20 as well. So that would have been but that would have been 1 top 20 team more. Well, actually, UC didn't have any top 20 wins. They had a top 25 win, but Pitt would have had that metric over their heads. So I think, basically we were 1, 2 inexplicable loss away in terms of Pitt and Wake Forest from early year from having a tough decision regarding Pitt. Do you take them over Cincinnati? So things played out the way they were supposed to, I guess. But just think about that for a minute, because Pitt made work of Wake Forest. Wake Forest is a damn good team. And they laid waste to those guys in the second half of the ACC championship game. Don't think the committee would have been paying close attention to that as well.
Oh, most definitely. The only thing, though, it would have taken a potential 2-loss Alabama team for that to really become a serious conversation, right? That's true too. Yeah. Because I'm still thinking they probably would have taken the UC over Pitt,
right?
Even with that 1 loss. God, is that East? Because you said it was Eastern Michigan, right?
Western Michigan. Yeah.
With that win over Western Michigan, was a Western Michigan win good enough to move them from 12th into the conversation of somewhere between 4th and 6th.
See, the reason why I say that is because that loss was kept them out of the top 10.
Most definitely.
I mean, they're a MAC school, no disrespect to the MAC. I love me some MAC shit, right? Hashtag MAC shit. But they lost to those boys at home.
Yeah.
You can't do that if you
No,
have
you
title
can't.
aspirations. That's what kept them to me. Yeah,
most definitely. Yeah.
I think that's what kept them out of top 10. Because otherwise, I think the one loss and that big winner over Wake in the ACC title game, I'm not saying they would have, to your point, but I think they would have thought about doing it, or the possibility, because of Power 5 one-loss squad. I mean, that's
I'll say this.
Possible. I mean,
with my rankings, and for those who didn't get a chance to see it, you can go ahead and check out my Twitter account at Dwayne_Nash on Twitter. I actually have my final top 10 of the season, what I normally give out for SLZE Sports on a weekly basis. And I actually had Pitt at number 8, based upon the fact that they won their conference championship.
Right.
So again, that goes to a situation where they probably could have been in that discussion. If I'm a committee member, though, I don't know if I necessarily have Pitt in at 4. Like I said before, it still would have been a conversation between.
I wouldn't have either. For the record, I wouldn't have either. But you never know, because this committee has a fetish for Power 5, and
they do, right?
I knew they did not want Cincinnati there.
No, most definitely.
They could stay. They could talk a good game, offer the most bountiful platitudes after the fact, and which they did. They were effusive in their praise, even though the studio members at college game day, with Joy Galloway, Kirk Herbstreit, and them, even though they were effusive in their praise of UC, they have been most of the year, but still, they had to figure, does a group of 5 really have a shot at this tournament? Do they really have a shot at this tournament? I mean, because that's remember, and they brought this up too. Remember that they were hyping up, well, maybe the group of 5 should have their own tournament. That was bandied about. Yeah. So now you could say that with a team like UC officially crashing the party. Luke Fickell said that they don't mean to be torchbearers for the group of 5. They're just trying to worry about their own business, which totally understandable. But you have to know, you gotta know that this group of 5 schools, no matter what the allegiances are, they're like, yo, we got a shot. Yeah. Even if it's by UC catching lightning in the bottle, beating Notre Dame by double digits at Notre Dame, beating Indiana on the road by double digits. All the chaos that surrounded them early in the year that allowed them to move up. But still, it just goes to show it's possible. Yeah. It happened. So it remains to be seen what happens on New Year's Eve with these semifinal games, but it's cool. Either way, UC we have nothing to be ashamed of. They have a great season, a historic season, and all they want is opportunity. All those group of 5 schools want is an opportunity to show that they can compete. That's all they want.
And it's very interesting that UC and, oddly enough, Florida A&M both made it to the playoffs, their respective playoffs, in the same season, when a lot of people, it's just paralleled, right, up until this point, where people were campaigning for both teams, both programs, to make their respective playoffs. There were a lot of people who probably questioned their resumes, respectively. And then when it got time for them to get in, when it got time for the selection process, and they were both capable of getting in, there's still some debate on whether or not they were worthy or not. But in Cincinnati's case, they were. Same thing with Florida A&M. The fact that they weren't necessarily even on a bubble and getting in with the Division II. The thing is, not Division I, Division II, I'm sorry, the FCS, level. The question is, I'm hoping that what happened with Florida A&M what ultimately happened with Florida A&M does not happen with the University of Cincinnati, and that's no shade to Florida A&M, because like Florida A&M, there are now a bunch of FCS fans questioning whether or not a SWAC team in the future deserves to make it into the playoffs, even if their resume, if their record, if it's like 9-2, says that they probably should be considered. The same thing with Cincinnati. There have been years and years in which an undefeated Group of 5 team has been in the conversation by fans, but never made it into anything higher than 6th on the committee's list. Right. Now we finally got a situation because everything aligned and fell right for them. Mm-hmm. If they go into this game against Alabama and they get mollywopped, right? When will be the next time that a Group of 5 team makes it in? Matter of fact, when will the stars align again for a Group of 5 team to make it in under these circumstances? Because they're going to have a similar path as Cincinnati, where they're going to end up having to beat a top 10 team in order for them to be considered as well. It's
crazy. It's just crazy in itself.
Yeah. But what name me many Group of 5 teams that schedule the likes of a top 10 team like that.
And now a lot of those Power 5s will want to go to their place.
And that too, right? So
it's hard. It's hard. It's very hard. It's very hard. Yeah. It's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, right? If you're a Group of 5 school trying to make all this happen, right? Yeah. So you gotta do what you gotta do, even if it's in the non-advantageous position. You know, if you gotta shoot for the stars, you gotta shoot high as you can. Yeah. And that's what you see there. They played two Power 5 schools on the road, albeit Indiana wasn't as good as it were last year. It wasn't UC's fault, but they set that up, and they set up the Notre Dame game because we figured that Notre Dame was gonna be really good. So so kudos to UC. We'll see what happens to college football playoff. I'm excited for it either way because you got new blood in Cincinnati and Michigan.
Yes.
Going against some old money. You got new blood against old money and Alabama and Georgia. So it should be good, should be exciting either way that we have change.
Most definitely.
Some change. So I'll roll with that.
And quick programming note.
Yes.
Next week, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what day it's going to be. But next week, SLZE Sports, that's at SLZE Sports on Facebook, we will be doing our annual bowl game preview, where we preview every single bowl game that's going to happen this season, including the Celebration Bowl. So come and check us out. Yes. We'll most definitely go ahead and post exactly when that show is going to be, but we're still trying to figure out if it's going to be either that Wednesday or Thursday of next week, but it's coming. Cool.
I'm tuning in for that as well. So,
but yeah,
thank you for mentioning that. Yes.
Yeah, but make sure to check us out either SLZE Sports on Twitter or SLZE Sports on Facebook, where we'll actually have the exact time and day next week when we're going to end up doing that show.
Nice. Let's keep it in football right quick and go to professional. Now, what kind of professional? You heard about that book, Robert Griffin III, that guy, or as you call him, that Bama, is going to put out Surviving Washington. I don't know if you saw, was it Instagram or Twitter? His post where he was like hyping the book up. He talked about.
It was on Facebook. I saw it on
Facebook. Okay, got it. Facebook. So when you talk about the actual, surviving Washington, like we talked about the dysfunction, how he survived dysfunction, and the sexual harassment, how I don't know if it was from he experiencing the sexual harassment from as it happened, or was he the victim of sexual harassment? I'm not clear on that. He was really ambiguous on that. But nevertheless, he's pushing a book and he's doing that. Now, mind you, this is the same guy, was it this year? When he campaigned to go back to Washington?
September.
There you go.
September, he was campaigning to play for this organization.
Yes.
Just a few months ago.
Yes. And this same guy, a few months later, put out a book. Now, I don't know if it's sour grapes or with that regard, but it seemed like it's been a long time in the making. You know, he's on TV now. He's doing analyst work for ESPN. Actually did a good job of being a color commentator for the ACC championship game, believe it or not. He actually did a good job. But now he's peddling this book. It's coming out soon. It's already it's on Simon Schuster website if you're interested.
And they're doing pre-orders for the book. It doesn't come out until I think the spring of next year.
Correct.
Oddly enough, I think it comes out the summer of next year, just as training camp is starting to open up. So yeah, the timing of all of this is going to be very interesting when that book drops.
And here's the blurb on the website. It says, and I'm quoting here, a one-of-a-kind, in-depth memoir from former franchise savior Robert Griffin III, detailing the shocking mismanagement.
Savior?
And toxic, I'm just reading this, and toxic culture within the most dysfunctional professional football team in America. Wow. Now, before I turn over to you, brother, because I know you're a Washington football team fan, I must say, for those of you who want a good laugh, go to YouTube and search for Fred Smoot RG3.
You're
welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I'll just give it a skinny. I would rather have you guys check it out because I'm going to ruin it. Because it's not going to be near as funny coming out of my mouth as it did out of Fred Smoot's mouth. But just think of this one phrase. Bobby Three Stacks.
Bobby Three Sticks. Bobby Three Sticks.
Right. I'm sorry, that's Stacks. Bobby Three Sticks.
Yeah.
Bobby Three Sticks.
I've already confessed several times today because a lot of people are starting to see it now. But whenever I refer to Robert Griffin, because I don't call him RG3, I will never call him RG3 ever again. I refer to him as full government of Robert Griffin III or Brittle Bob. Brittle Bob or Bobby Three Sticks is the nickname that Fred Smoot had so poignantly gave him back in around, what was that, 2013, 2014, while doing radio. And I just thought it was completely hilarious, especially his whole bit on him potentially selling peanut brittle and naming it Brittle Bob Three Sticks, and was going to be like in a package of 3 peanut brittle sticks. I thought that was hilarious.
That's outstanding, by the way.
So I salute Fred Smoot for that and inspiring me for stealing that nickname of Brittle Bob, because that's the name that I continue to use it for as right now. But now I got to address a few things. Let me start with this whole savior thing. I have to say, and I don't want to sound blasphemous when I say this, right?
No worries.
Would Jesus be considered a savior or would anybody be considered? I don't even want to use Jesus. Let me take Jesus out of this. If I saw you drowning and I come out into the ocean and grab you and bring you back oceanside, and then I pick you back up and I take you back into the water and I drown you myself, would I be considered a savior?
No, you'd be considered Judas. Or worse than Judas.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Because and I use that analogy because in essence, that is exactly what Robert Griffin III did in his time here in DC as an athlete. You know, he came out, they had that wonderful run in 2012, but let's not forget they sure as hell struggled and was 5-5 before they went on that 7-game run. I'm sorry, it wasn't a 7-game run. It was a 5-game run, 6-game run, because they finished the year 10-6 and ended up as a wild card.
Right.
So with that said, dude, if you were a savior, you would have been wonderful the entire season.
Right.
Oh, also one of those wins during that 5-game run, 6-game run. I'm sorry, they went. They did lose one during that time because they went 10-6 that year. When they went finished the season 5-1, one of those wins was not yours, bruh. It was Kirk Cousins.
Right.
Let's not forget that, right? So as much as you were a savior, you were still a detriment to this organization because you came back too early. You weren't ready for the next season. You had the whole ready for week 1 campaign. And I think they ended up losing that game week 1 with you starting. Yeah, let's not forget that. And then with all of the accusations of how you separated yourself from the organization and became extremely buddy-buddy with the owner.
Yeah,
so much so that you and your parents were capable of using his private plane to go places. They had access to the locker room. Your parents had access to the locker room when a lot of other people didn't even think to bring their parents to the locker room. Now, what I'm not going to do is do what Fred Smoot did and question your manhood for the fact of you coming out with a memoir in the first place. I'm not going to do that.
Sure.
But what I am going to question is your intent for all of this stuff, and what do you seem to gain out of this when, dude, you were as culpable, if not more so culpable, in this entire thing.
And that's what Shannon Sharp's whole point was. As long as he's able to admit his role in all this, because he mentioned that, your point. He mentioned his being better with the owner. He mentioned walking up into Mike Shanahan's office after his rookie year, when he won Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
Wanted to play like Peyton Manning. Wanted to play like Andrew Luck.
Yeah. Well, dog, that's not your style of play. But you know what? You know what the interesting thing is? I think earlier that next season, they did try to play him in the pocket a lot. And what did he do? He failed at it.
Yes. Miserably. Because that's not his game. That's not his game.
Because that's not his game.
Right.
Shanahan, and say what you want. You could say that Mike and Kyle probably called up offenses to keep that dude in the pocket. And then there are several people who say that, you know, a lot of times when Robert would get hit, it will be because of the fact that the O-line let him down. But I will say this. A lot of the things in terms of him lying about his injury, that's on you, bruh. You confronting the head coach and telling him what style of offense that you want to play and you're not capable of playing that style of offense. And it showed when you played in Cleveland too, was your fault, bruh. The way that you was perceived by your teammates, all your fault. So a lot of the things, I just hope that you talk about everything that was your fault there when you were in DC too, along with the fact that you want to go ahead and blame whoever for your failures, Savior. Oh my God, that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Savior, dude.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, but I mean, this again, I think we may have said this last week. He was Lamar Jackson before Lamar Jackson.
He was. The difference is he wasn't as confrontational about the style of offense that he was playing, and he was trusting of his coaches and coordinators.
Yeah.
Unlike Brittle Bob. That point. So that's the difference between Lamar and Robert, was the fact that, you know, oh my God, the fact that a dude in Robert Griffin that played baseball did not know how to slide. They brought in the lights.
That still vexes me. A professional athlete not knowing how to slide. That's I don't know about that. That's
extremely vexing to me. But you know what? When you don't have to slide in Baylor, that carries over to your professional playing days. They even brought out Strasburg to come show him how to slide, and it still didn't work. Oh my God, man! We could talk all night about the failings of Robert Griffin III and how that should be the topic of discussion, rather than whatever the hell he's going to talk about in this book. Because I swear he's just probably trying to make himself look like, and to paraphrase both Fred Smoot and LeVar Arrington during that interview, he's probably coming out to try to make himself look like the victim in this, and at the same time, a savior, because he's being a whistleblower against an organization that's been taking a lot of hits, both on and off the field, in recent years, and he's just going to go ahead and try to pour on into this while making money at the same time. I guess one of the things that'll kind of be kind of counter that is if Washington continues to have the season that they're currently having now and making the playoffs in consecutive seasons for the first time in God knows exactly how long. I know one guy who didn't do it was the so-called savior in Robert Griffin III. But I digress. So yeah, it's just very interesting that this dude is coming out with this book. But at the same time, it's also painstakingly tragic to a lot of people here in the DC area, to fans, to former players.
Yeah.
Not just players that played within the organization, but players that played with him.
Yeah. Right.
Players that played with him that had some negative things to say about him. And then, of course, local media that had some things to say about him as well. And it was very interesting that after that video dropped on social media about his announcement for the book, former beat, no, he's still a beat reporter with the team, but he also does spots on the NBC affiliate here, and he also has a local radio show here with should be Hall of Famer Brian Mitchell, JP Finley, who of course was strictly a beat writer with the organization while Robert was a player there, has connections with him, tried to reach out to him to have him come on the show the day after the announcement dropped. No one from his camp responded.
Crickets. Okay.
Very much so, right? So, this is an opportunity for you to push your book, but at the same time, you probably knew that JP was going to ask you questions that you weren't going to like. And I know someone else was going to ask him a question or two that he wasn't going to like. And that would have been one Brian Mitchell, who also, once again, is a beloved player from this organization that also loves this organization and wants to see it succeed in like the days of which he played with the team, and would have asked you the same tough questions too. And you probably wouldn't have liked that either.
Right. He wouldn't have. Spoiler, he wouldn't have liked that. That's why he didn't respond.
He wouldn't.
It's plain and simple.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this up with a preview. We're going to our HBCU Sports segment. We've got a preview of the Celebration Bowl. Jackson State. Are they going against South Carolina State from the MEAC?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They're going against South Carolina State.
The Battle of the States, if you will. So Jackson State, South Carolina State. I think Jackson State's favorite big. I think they'll win big, but I want you to bless us all with an in-depth preview, if you can, only whether you could do it on this Celebration Bowl, which would be what time? I know it's be on ESPN, right?
It'll be Saturday the 18th, noon.
Okay.
And my God, let me
18th.
go ahead and say that. Yeah, Saturday the 18th. Let me go ahead and say this now, because I think we may have touched on it a little bit when this particular tournament was first announced. The HBCU Dream Tournament. Well, I can't remember what it's exactly called. That one Michael B. Jordan is holding in Brooklyn.
Okay.
That exact same day.
Okay.
It's also being played the exact same time as the Celebration Bowl. So yeah, the Celebration Bowl itself starts at noon. The basketball games start at 1.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out who was the genius that made that decision when they knew that what is considered to be the HBCU national title game
right,
is being played at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, they should have made some sort of concessions to try to, if not hold it on a different day, hold it at least at a different time. Right. I understand there's going to be two games played, but my God, you're forcing HBCU fans to go ahead and potentially split their time like that. But it is what it is, bruh. I'm hoping for success for that game. Sure. All I know is I'm going to be in Atlanta covering the Celebration Bowl, and I'm wondering what type of HBCU media is going to be at that game.
We want videos. Short videos.
We most definitely would get them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I can't give you so much of a preview.
Well, obviously, yeah.
I'm doing my full preview next week for Hero Sports.
Yes.
But I can go ahead and at least give you a snippet of a preview.
A little taste.
I'll give you a small taste, give you a little taste before the full thing comes out next week. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I'm a little disappointed because I wish I would have known prior to, because I would have set my flight up to Atlanta to be earlier than what it's going to be, because I'm going to miss the presser on Thursday. And my God, it's going to be the most entertaining press conference for the Celebration Bowl in Celebration Bowl history, if you're asking me, because of the fact that we have the entertainer and Coach Deion Sanders for Jackson State. And my God, you got the old school uncle and Coach Buddy Pugh of South Carolina State.
That's the old school name, by the way, Buddy Pugh. That's the old school.
Yes, right.
That screams
sounds
old
like
school.
your old school uncle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen videos of him earlier this year playing spades. But every Monday, there were 3 people who I looked to see or have great quotes come from. Actually, I take it back, 2. Because even with that third being Connell Maynard of Alabama A&M, if they suffered the loss, he wasn't as jovial. But win, lose, or draw, Deion Sanders and Buddy Pugh was going to give you a quotable for that day, and I was going to end up smiling by the end of their press
Makes
conference.
your job easier and more fun.
Makes it that much more fun and that much more enjoyable. Not to say that the other coaches aren't great to hear, because I love the passion that a lot of the other coaches, especially the likes of Larry Scott of Howard, Tyron Wheatley over there, Morgan State, my man Rod Milstead at Delaware State, Dawson Odoms over at Norfolk State, hearing Eric Dooley, who is now with Southern. I'll get to that in just a moment. Formerly at Prairie View A&M, and just listening to those other coaches. My man over at Dancy over at Mississippi Valley State.
Okay.
Just listen to those coaches throughout the year with the passion that they have for their institutions and their players. But my God, the comedy of Pugh and Sanders is going to be hilarious coming up next Thursday.
I heard that. I know that's right.
Yeah, so you're going to have these two organizations that are set up slightly differently, where of course South Carolina State has the history of the defense, with such players as Javon Hargraves of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
And
Darius Leonard, right?
And Darius Leonard of the Indianapolis Colts, both formerly playing at South Carolina State under Buddy Pugh recently. And they also have Jacoby Durant, a safety there at South Carolina State that a lot of people are looking to as being the next defensive standout to go pro from that program.
Nice.
And then, of course, you have that extremely stout and talented defense of Jackson State that is ranked in the top 3, if not top 2, in the major defensive statistical categories in FCS football, led by the likes of James Houston and Aubrey Miller. That defense is extremely stout as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these two defenses play. And then, of course, the offenses with Shedeur Sanders, of course, Coach Sanders, his son, leading JSU. And then Corey Fields Jr. over at South Carolina State, who's a dual threat QB as well. Well, not as well, but a dual threat QB over there for the Bulldogs. That's going to be interesting to see how that Jackson State defense handles both him and that running back Kendrell Flowers too. But you talk about Shedeur, and that's one of the things that has been kind of like an inconsistent situation with Jackson State throughout the entire year. There have been games where he's been excellent, but there have been games just like this past weekend against Prairie View A&M. And shout out to Prairie View A&M, because a lot of people didn't realize that defense was that good. They actually held Shedeur to under 90 yards passing. But at the same time, Jackson State held Javon Pass to under 90 yards passing too. So both of the defense did great jobs. It just happened to be, unfortunately, with Prairie View A&M, they gave up 5 turnovers in that championship game that led to them getting defeated 27-10 this past week. And that's something, of course, that no team can deal with, turning the ball over 5 times and winning.
Right.
So that's something, of
pretty
course,
hard to do that. Yeah.
It's extremely difficult to do, especially when you're giving your defense, when you're giving them short fields to try to convert. So those are the things that I want to go ahead and say that South Carolina State is going to have to make sure they keep an eye out for is, one, can they generate a run game against Jackson State? 2, try to mitigate the turnovers so they don't end up having short fields for their defense. And then 3, try to keep that Jackson State offense in check, because at times Jackson State seems to do it to themselves. But if you can go ahead and play well enough to keep them off the field, and you're moving the ball as well, that'll be wonderful for them. But one of the issues especially outside of playing conference opponents this year, especially in the FBS or the FCS level. South Carolina State has given up an average of a little bit over 35 points per game against FCS opponents outside of the MEAC this year. And 2 of those times were against SWAC teams, and they give up 42 points to those teams too. So I know the South Carolina State faithful are going to hope that they get the defense from the Bulldogs from the latter half of the season, as opposed to early on this season, to compete against this very, very tough Jackson State team.
Yeah. It's going to be a very entertaining game. I'm looking forward to it. So it's December 18th. I thought it was this weekend. It's the 18th.
Yes, sir. It's December the 18th.
On ESPN or ESPN2?
On ABC.
Oh, ABC. That's even better. Okay, ABC.
It's going to be on ABC. Cool. Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Cool. Appreciate that. Want to get a quick shout out to Marcus Freeman. I don't know, remember we touched on this last week? No, probably didn't. But Marcus Freeman.
Because we didn't know yet.
We didn't know yet. That's right. Marcus Freeman officially named as the head coach, no interim head coach, 35-year-old brother.
Yeah.
Of Notre Dame. Apparently the team wanted him. Some in the administration wanted him. They're going to show you what type of man they think he is, or the job that he did. In that less than one calendar year, and Notre Dame turned that defense around because he sees as a rising star. And I think if Luke Fickell were to go back to Notre Dame, right, before they made a hire, I think Freeman, who served as defensive coordinator under Luke Fickell here for like past 4 or 5 years before leaving to go to Notre Dame, I think he would have been the choice to lead UC's program. But nevertheless, I'm happy for him. I hope that they be Notre Dame administration, the big wigs and decision makers, give him more time than they did Ty Willingham.
Ding, ding, ding. I was just about to say the exact same thing.
I hope that they do give him more time. I think hopefully they've learned from that, because every coach got 5 years. Gary Faust got 5 years. For those you don't know who he is, that's old school. Google him from the 80s. What's his name? Can't think of him right now, but the other guy, Charlie Weiss, got 5 years. Bob Davie, that's what they were trying to think of. He got 5 years. They normally give him 5 years. And William only had 3. So let's hope that they support this brother, Marcus Freeman. I think he's going to do well. He has the locker room's respect that you saw. Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator from last year, agreed to stay on. He wanted to stay on. He's going to stay on, which helps. A lot of the people that actually come to find out, Brian Kelly tried to get Marcus Freeman to go to LSU with them, to go with them to LSU. He tried hard, apparently, but he decided to stay back here, back in South Bend. And so a lot of the staff will retain there. I don't know if it says anything more about Brian Kelly that no one went with him, but that's another story for another time. But the point is that let's hope that Notre Dame gives this brother support. Let's hope that, I know the players are, and the alumni, and most of the alumni is looking to give him some support. So let's just hope that the decision makers and important people at Notre Dame give this brother some time and give him some support. I think Jack Swarbrick, the athletic director, is on board helping him. He really wanted him to stay. So again, he's 35 years old. That's good to see a finally 35-year-old person of color, no less, get this opportunity to say a young Lincoln Riley got, or many other young coaches. And Lincoln Riley's a damn good coach. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, I'm just glad that we're seeing these guys get opportunities.
Most definitely.
These brothers and other people of color, coaches of color, get these opportunities who are young. Like these phenoms, their phenom counterparts are. So maybe that'll start a trend, but I just hope, I don't like Notre Dame, but I'm hoping that he does well. Let's put it that way. So I was going to quick shout out to Marcus Freeman. Hopefully they'll support him, unlike they didn't support Ty Willingham. We won't get into that. But anyway, that still made me mad. But all right, that's cool, man. So got the college football playoff. We're happy with that. We will. And by the way, to check more of his preview, I will provide the link when that link becomes available. When your preview's finished, I'll provide the link in the description as well. So please DM me, D. So I'll hook a brother up and
most definitely
with the information that you have to share. And yeah, so not much going on this weekend, but hopefully you guys have a safe weekend. Thank you for tuning to the Klown Hour. Oh, one more thing. This is our 400th. Last week was our 400th episode.
Yes.
I forgot to say that. I meant to say that earlier. I'm glad I remember just now. So right quick, this includes the audio version of the podcast from way back when. We incorporated the numbers to include this with the video version of the podcast. So we have 400 last week.
Wow.
Thank you, my man, for being there with me for the vast majority of the 400. Thank you for taking a chance.
Having me.
And hey, thank you for taking a chance with me on being my co-host for most of those. You didn't have to do it, but thank you, brother. I owe you a lot.
The same could be said about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you didn't have to ask me to come on. So I thank you for the exact same way. So, you know, thank you for giving me a platform to continue to spread not only my opinion about sports, but also share my love and my knowledge of HBCU athletics as well
for that too,
here on the Klown Times. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And again, that's a story that needs to be told more. HBCU athletics. I know more people, brothers out and sisters out there are doing the damn thing, hitting the pavement, pounding the pavement on that. But we need more of that, and I'm glad that you doing it. Like,
thank you.
What's the word I want to say? Non-apologetically. So I thank you for that. I think that's one of the big reasons why I have you on my show, man.
But before we go, quick, you know, it's coaching carousels going everywhere. It's also happening in the HBCU ranks. I alluded to it earlier. Fresh off of his loss against Deion Sanders in Jackson State in the SWAC championship game, the former Prairie View A&M head coach Eric Dooley is now the Southern head coach. He was the one-time assistant under the legendary Pete Richardson there at Southern from like the 90s to 2010 before moving on. But now he decided to go back, not necessarily to his alma mater, but to his early start. As a matter of fact, his first start in terms of the coaching ranks to go ahead and coach there at South Carolina State. So that now means that Prairie View A&M has an opening, and Grambling will be announcing who will be filling their spot as head coach this coming Friday. On their website, they'll be making that announcement. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly who that head coach is going to be. And I say it's going to be interesting because one of the names that's been volleyed around has been former NFL head coach and current Tennessee State offensive coordinator Hugh Jackson as a potential replacement there at Grambling. So it's going to be very interesting to see who they bring in there in Louisiana to fill that spot. And then the same thing can be said about Prairie View A&M, who potentially could be the guy that'll fill that spot there. Would it be one of their current assistants there? Would it be former quarterback and now assistant over at Florida A&M, KJ Black? So it's going to be very interesting to see who fills those two voids in the coming weeks. And once those announcements come out, of course, I'll go ahead and I'll let everyone know who those new coaches will be.
Right, cool.
Oh, and also rest in peace to Claude Humphreys, the former Tennessee State alum and Pro Football Hall of Famer who was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2017. He passed away this past week. He was most notably an Atlanta Falcon, played 10 years there, 3 years with the Philadelphia Eagles, primarily in the late 70s, early 80s. He passed away this past weekend. And shout out to Larry Bird. Larry Legend, his birthday was yesterday.
Happy birthday to Larry Legend himself.
Yeah.
He's a Celtic. I hate him, but happy birthday nonetheless. Anyway, subscribe, like, comment, and share. We appreciate the support and everything else. Until next time, take care. Stay safe. Peace out.